Hey, what's going on, guys? We got a special guest today on the Clockedin podcast, Jonathan Bengel. Jonathan, tell us a little bit about what you're up to, man.
Hey, Jordan, thank you so much for having me here, clocked in. Just so you know, I am clocked in, buckled in, and I'm ready to rock and roll.
Oh, that's
So
amazing.
I have to ask your listeners, especially if they're entrepreneurs, do you know what your purpose is in this life? And what's interesting about this is a lot of entrepreneurs will give me different answers, right? Oh, different things. But what they're afraid to say is that they're in it to make money. And that's because a lot of people out there have told them that saying that is a dirty word. Making money, being wealthy is dirty. Well, I'm Jonathan Bengel, and I'm an intuitive business tax strategist. I'm an IRS Enrolled Agent. I'm an author of a #1 best-selling book. I'm also a speaker, and I'm a serial entrepreneur. For the past 19 years, what I've done is I've guided heart-centered women and a few good men, entrepreneurs, speakers, healers, and other coaches through what I call the darkness of making money while shredding their taxes and transforming their lives to business financial happiness.
Incredible.
Yes. So, our purpose here is to make money. However, there's a secondary reason that comes with it. So, just a little bit of background about me, and you may have made a note of this or not, but you see, I was actually born into extreme poverty. And I like to define this for people because sometimes we have our own definitions of what that means, right? Some people may say, oh, being poor meant that I couldn't buy my pair of Nikes, right? Or poor means that, I had to eat just McDonald's every Friday with my mother because she was separated from my father, right? Like, I have to give definitions. So, extreme poverty is when you are born to a single mother who has an education of just sixth grade, who is incapable of really holding a job due to her own unfortunate past. I'm also a third generation Mexican American. My grandmother actually migrated from Mexico to the United States and stood in line for 3 long days before she could cross into the United States by herself at just the tender age of 14. When she crosses into the United States, she's reunited with her aunt who happens to live in the US, where she then, of course, becomes a US citizen and ends up later on producing 15 children living on a family farm. And the children, which my mother was one of those 15, was produced for the pure purpose of managing the cattle or the sheep or all the other animals at a certain age. And then you would be upgraded to pick cotton, sugarcane, and corn. So this was my mother's life for 365 days for almost 18 years of her life until she herself was able to get away and move to the small little town called Albuquerque, New Mexico, where she meets her man of her dreams, a tall, 6'3", blonde hair, blue eyed white guy named Thomas. She ends up marrying him, and she herself ends up getting a job at this place called Greyhound Bus Station. Unfortunately, a year after my birth, she receives the most devastating phone call. Bring, bring. She answers the phone. Hello, is this Miss Bengal? Yes, it is, she says. Unfortunately, we need you to come to the emergency room. Your husband is laying here. He's been shot in the head. She drops everything she's doing and rushes to the hospital to find her husband on life support. He's been shot in the forehead, straight with a 22 shotgun, or a 22 rifle, sorry, a 22 handgun, killed by a man who would later not be who would be acquitted for committing the murder because they could not put him on the scene, even though eyewitnesses saw him. Thomas was murdered for being a closeted gay man at an adult store, where my mother had no idea this is where he was going, nor did she know he would die on this day. She found herself in complete turmoil. Her house that she had dreamt about with the white picket fence, quite literally, because I visited this house, was stripped away. His family kicked her out. She did not know she had rights as a wife. And next thing you know, she found herself living on the streets with her young son. She would later give birth to my younger brother. And as a result, she would only make less than $500 a month where we lived in typically studio apartments, not the best of neighborhoods. Friends were prostitutes or drug dealers or druggies themselves. My life was growing up without the opportunities that other people have. My constant meals were just the same three staples every single day that my mother knew how to make. And quite frankly, I miss it sometimes. But it was it would always start out with beans. My mother would make some type of bean soup. And then she would repurpose those beans for an entire week to stretch them out. Everything from soup beans, so to speak, all the way down to refried beans multiple times. Same thing with rice. Sometimes, if we were lucky, she could afford to get the meat that was about to expire that would go on sale. And she'd buy that meat that was slightly turning brown and utilize it so that we could eat it. Or how about my favorite dish that she used to make? Are you ready? There were times where she used to splurge and buy us Velveeta macaronis and cheese. Sometimes she would throw in hot dogs to mix it up. But this was what I was given my entire life until I soon ran away my own self. Unfortunately, because of my own mother's trauma, she would take it out on us, physically, emotionally, and spiritually abused for over 18 years, 365 days. Being abused means that we take on all the bull that people give us. The trauma affects us. And so by the time I was able to get out, I remember being in sixth grade, and it was my science teacher who said to me, "You know, Jonathan, the key to ending your poverty is education." And so I set forth to really do my best because I had this idea, I had this belief that wealthy people were one, they were intelligent and smart, and that wealthy people made money and they had a lot of it. And so I set out to make sure that no matter how many times my mother moved us to different schools because she got evicted, because she couldn't pay the rent, I always made sure to excel. By the time I was done graduating high school, I was ranked number 4 out of 398 students. I was a full recipient of the presidential and regional scholarships. I could attend any university I wanted to attend. And in the end, I ended up attending the University of Arizona, where I later earned my bachelor's degree in business accounting and then later my master's degree in secondary education in my 30s. During this time, I worked for CPA firms, and unfortunately, because I was an openly gay male, I was oftentimes fired for being gay. When I went into the education world and became a teacher, I was also fired for being openly gay in the classroom. At the end of the day, I had no choice but to figure out what in the world am I supposed to do? And one day I realized I know what I'm supposed to do. I am supposed to help to educate and empower other entrepreneurs because entrepreneurs are brought here to bring forth happiness and joy. But what are those things? It's the relief of suffering of others. And when clients come to us, they are suffering from their own needs. For you, for example, Jordan, they suffer because as a business owner, they have to pay those credit card fees, right? They don't really want to do it. For me, they suffer because they overpay in their taxes. And so I realized, well, we are the root of that happiness. And it turns out that the IRS agrees, which is why I was able to write this book called The ABCs of Deductions, an Entrepreneur's Guide to Tax Write-Offs, because I realized that Uncle Sam is actually on our side. He wants us to be happy and to deliver happiness, and in the process, to make a whole lot of money. In the process of me growing up in my own business, I guess you can say, I would end up looking back at myself and asking myself this question: Jonathan, how in the world did you do it? And when I looked at myself in the mirror, which is a technique that I teach my clients, I came to realize that I had developed my own method, and I call it the Bengel method. It's named after me. After all, I am the creator, just like we are all the creators of our own existence. And so I set about to go ahead and I wrote out these methods. And it starts out first with what I call the profit mindset. It is believing that you are the most powerful CEO in the world. Even if you just woke up and you decided to take charge of your own life to become the owner of your own destiny, CEOs are very powerful. We don't have to look far. Look at Elon Musk. Look at all these other CEOs. Amazon's another one, right? Like you just look at them. They control the world, literally. And I know that I maintained that mindset when I first started my company 19 years ago. I wanted to be that CEO, that powerful person that helps to make decisions, even though I was not officially a CEO. It also makes us have to believe as a profit mindset that we are capable of making a whole lot of money, and there is nothing wrong with that. Because you see, money is a symbolism of energy. It flows from one hand to the next. Money cannot be possessed. Just like we cannot possess a person, we cannot possess experiences, nothing we can possess, because the truth is, Jordan, you, me, and the listeners are all going to die. And when we die, there will be nothing that goes along with us. So therefore, I can practice this thing called non-attachment, right? But I digress. Money cannot be owned. And so really what money is, it's energy flowing from one to the next. It's not good. It's not bad. And therefore, I reject the idea that money is the root of all evil. Instead, it is the judgment and expectations that others place on us. That is the root of all evil. Why? Because when we grow up, we think to ourselves, oh, I can't be this fabulous business owner because people told me I had to put on suits and jackets. Oh, I can't make a whole lot of money because everyone around me told me I'm going to have to pay a whole lot of taxes. Oh, I can't process credit cards and charge that to my clients because people told us nobody would pay for that. Right? It's these judgments and these expectations that others put upon us from a business level all the way down to the most basic human principle of existence, which is to be happy. People are always searching to dim our light. But when we look to ourselves as a guide and we look to our higher source of who we are, there are no words and there are no actions that can stop us from fulfilling our life's purpose. What do you think
Wow,
about that?
that was profound. That was incredible. I wasn't expecting that, John. That was really, really cool. And I think the points you brought up about money are so important and powerful. The fact that, I mean, you did have it rough and that you still don't think money's the root of all evil because you adjusted your mindset. It allowed you to open your perspective and realize that money's an energy. Money's the value you provide to people. And the other thing I would bring up is what you were discussing about viewing when people ask for money through business. It becomes difficult, but it's, hey, you have a pain. You're overpaying in taxes. Let's save you money. It becomes apparent to people, and it makes sense. So,
Right?
yeah,
Right. It's
absolutely.
true. Because, like, that's the thing, right? Like, what I figured out is that, again, money is not the root of all evil. It's how we feel about ourselves. And our businesses are like our children. This has been my motto for a long time now. And in the second part of my step is I say the separation of self, right? Believing that you are not your company and your company is not you. Boom, mind blown, right? Because it's like,
Yeah.
but wait a minute, but like I'm working in my business. I come here to my home office or to my office space and I do all the selling and I do all of the, well, I try to do the accounting, but it's like somewhere, like, somewhere. And I try to charge people and I use all kinds of different links and right, there's all these things that we're doing. And so we're like, but I'm the business, but I'm the business. The problem with that mindset is that it does not allow us to be objective in our business because we become too attached, too emotionally vested. And that's why I teach this concept called that, well, I don't know if I have a calling for it, but basically saying that you are like a parent to your child, which is your business. And if you can see your child or your business acting like a child would, then most people who I work with typically are, like I said, are women, and most of my women clients and students have children. But most people in the world, even fathers, would probably say, well, I would never abuse my child, right? Unless you're some
Yeah.
twisted person, but I digress, right? Or, you would never steal from your child, or you would never belittle your child, or you would never, do all these things. And despite the abuse that I received from my mother, surprisingly enough, she never used negative words towards me, as in like, you're stupid or you're this or you're that. It was more like physical discipline with a stick because you failed to put away your socks or some bullshit like that. But anyways, so it's like, you think about, like, you would never hurt your child. And when we start our businesses, we are essentially giving birth to a child. And just like a baby, when they're born, they need us. They come to us for everything, right? From the moment of inception. And that's true of our businesses. And that's why I jokingly say that I'm a father of three, right? So I've got a 19-year-old, his name is JB Financial, and that's my tax prep business. And then I had an unplanned pregnancy now almost 2.5 years ago. And I gave birth to Naked Tax Talk, which is my YouTube show and marketing edition. And then I just gave birth to my toddler, and that's Jonathan Bengel, and that's my advisory business, right? So, like when we see them in these different lights, and we see our businesses in a different way, it allows us then to have a relationship with our business. And now we get to see, like, oh, yeah, like I gave my company money so that it can survive. So, it's like, for example, we all give DNA to our kids, right? Like you give, like as men, we give sperm and women give their eggs, right? And
Yeah.
then it produces this thing called a kid. And really what we're giving is DNA. And I don't know about you, Jordan, but if you had a child or if you have children, do you have children?
No children
No
yet. No.
children yet. All right. But I imagine those that do have children, like, would you go to your child and be like, so child, I want my DNA back because I gave it to you when I like injected it, to your mother. So I want that back. Right. Like, how ludicrous is that?
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's what happens when you treat your business in that manner. So, like, I hear a lot of people will go, but I gave money to my company. Now I'm going to get it back. Right. And I have to remind them, like, yeah, but would you do that to your kid? Would you go to your kid and say, I want my DNA back?
Yeah.
Right? You would wait for your child to grow up and then they start having their own little jobs, right? And like I did. So I started having my job. Actually, I traded violin lessons in exchange for cleaning her yard. That's what I did for 2.5 years to get private lessons as a poor kid, right?
Wow.
So, like, I've always had a job in some capacity or another, right? But eventually you get to the point where, like, when I was like 16, I started working at Burger King and I was so happy I was making $163 every other week. Ooh la la, I was rich. And I would come home and I would give my mom, a couple $10 here, whatever I helped to pay for, maybe I want a chicken, and that's like our businesses. It starts to make a profit, and then it goes, oh, mom, dad, I have extra cash. Now I give it to you, right? And you take this out of your business, and we use accounting terms called a distribution. So this
Yeah.
is kind of like how that works, right? So if we can see our business in a different light, we can start to have a different relationship. And then what happens is I come up with this thing called the entity choice. You know how many times, Jordan, I listen to solopreneurs and they'll say to me, well, I formed an LLC because I get more tax deductions. And I always chuckle on the inside because who am I to judge? Every trash can has a lid, right? So, at the end of the day, I go, okay, well, what makes you think that, right? And they always go, oh, because now I get to have a home office deduction, and now I can pay myself, which is a lie, and now I can do all these other things. And I'm always like, but did you also know you just increased the cost of doing business as well? And so I use sex actually to explain the entity choice, right? So to give your listeners an idea, when you are a solopreneur and you're not taking any legal action to protect yourself, right? You just start selling your services or your goods and you start
Yeah.
giving it to everybody, right? You're practicing this thing called unsafe sex. All
Yeah.
right. So we all know what, we're all adults here. We all know what that is. And as we know, you practice unsafe sex, and all it takes is one contamination to happen to you, right? One STI, one STD, or whatever. And that will ruin you, put you out for a couple of weeks, right? With antibiotics and all kinds of terror. And you're going to pay money, by the way, to go to the doctor to get this done, right?
Yeah.
So just like in business, you go and you do all these things without protection, you're going to have to pay to get it all fixed, right?
Yeah.
So what happens, you practice this thing called unsafe sex. And Uncle Sam, because he influences everything we do in our lives, he goes, I don't think so. I don't like that you're having unsafe sex. And so I'm going to charge you a premium in tax is what happens. And so ultimately what happens, you pay more in tax. So then people go, well, I'm going to go form an LLC and I'm going to put some protection in place, create more deductions, and Uncle Sam's going to be happy. But what happens is that using an LLC is like using a dental dam. So, you're kind of like putting up a little piece of plastic between you and something else. And direct transmission now of fluids is blocked, right? So that's like you out there selling your businesses, right? Your goods, your services. But guess what? There's a gap on the sides, and fluid still can come out from the side, can't it? So Uncle Sam goes, nice try, Jordan. You try to use a dental dam and you create an LLC. I appreciate you. I applaud you for that, buddy. Um, but there's still fluid leaking out everywhere. And so you're still going to pay a premium in tax, right? So you're like, damn. So what's the next step? Well, a lot of people talk about this thing called S corporations. But what they don't understand about S corporations is that they're kind of like a blend between a condom and a dental dam. And so it's kind of like a female condom, I guess you could say. Well, maybe, I mean, I don't know if that's a good analogy. I've never used it before till right now. But, anyways, so like a condom is 99.99% effective, which is a corporation. And so what's happening is the income that you're producing, right? And let's be real, when you make a profit, what do? We scream and moan and we have a gay old time about it, right? Like, woohoo, I made some money, right? I made a profit, woohoo, right?
Yeah.
That's what happens when we arise to the occasion, so to speak, and finish, right? We tend to scream with joy. And so just like a condom that joy gets stuck, that profit gets stuck inside of this thing called a condom. It doesn't leak anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Keeps you safe. And Uncle Sam goes, I like that a lot. And as a result, you're going to pay a lower tax to have safe sex.
Oh, interesting.
Whoa, interesting, right? So as a result, when we know the entity choice that we should make, it unlocks new deductions, thereby reducing our taxable income downward. But we have to understand how all that works at a very surface level. And then what happens is you hire someone like me, an intuitive business tax strategist, that actually will tell you when to go and put on a dental dam, when to go and put on a condom, and why you're going to do it, because it's all about the money. So what people don't understand is you can go from practicing a sole proprietorship, doesn't cost you a whole lot. You start doing business. That's the right we have in this country. And then the more you scale, or the bigger you become, or the more riskier your services are, the more damage you could do to somebody, basically, the greater the protection that you're going to need, not only from a legal side, but also from a tax side. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if we know how the entities work, then we can move into the deductions. And what I do in my class called Small Business Financial Happiness Blueprint.com, what I do in this class is we talk about these deductions. We talk about 3 major deductions as a sole proprietor, 3 major deductions as an LLC owner, 3 major deductions as an S Corp and a C Corp deductions. Because like I said earlier, based on that entity choice, will determine the types of deductions that you're allowed to take. And they differ based on your entity choice.
Wow.
Fascinating,
Yeah.
right? And then what I do next, part of my process, my method, the Bengel method goes, okay, great. So now we know mindset, separation of self. I look at it. I'm a father of my kids. I know how to have sex now if I can choose safe and unsafe, right? And then I've got to look at my deductions, the things that I can expense out, right? Old, or I would challenge us to think of it differently and think of it as investing in our businesses. An expense, the only expense that you have as an entrepreneur is tax. That's the only expense you have. Everything else is an investment. Why? Because we spend money to make money. And the IRS agrees with that statement, because the IRS says that a business expense or business deduction, not expense, deduction, is only allowed if you have a business purpose behind it that is ordinary and is necessary in order to produce that money.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's
Right?
more about the fact that it's changing. What you do, Jonathan, it seems like all the associations are changed. So the customary person, if they're working a 9 to 5, they get paid, they spend their money, that's it. You go into the business world, they're like, oh, now we can make money. But it's really you make that money, and it's how you handle that money and allocate that money that really dictates what you really keep. And
Yes.
there's so many different elements to it, as you're explaining, the S Corp, the C Corp, the LLC, and it can be overwhelming.
It can be very overwhelming. And we have to forget there's this deduction called a fringe benefit. And That's a technical term, but what a fringe benefit means, and in my words, is I say it's kind of like the add back value of you taking care of your child. And it's just things that we just happen to receive benefit from, although that wasn't the intention. So I'll give you a classic deduction: meals, right? Meals and booze, to be more specific, right? So the law basically for 22 reverted back to 2020 law. But in 21, we had a special law that basically said that all your meals and all your booze was 100% write off so long as you were at a restaurant. Because, right, because we're trying to boost restaurant sales, right? So that
Yeah.
actually was working, right? So it incentivizes us. Well, back it reverts. 22 now says you only get 50% of that benefit, right? And what that means, and this is where people get confused, is they go, oh, well, do I use my personal card and my business card to pay for these things? And the answer is no. You're going to use your business cards or your business checking account. Or if you happen to use your personal credit card to pay for a business meal, then we'll have to have another conversation on how to treat that. But I digress. So what happens is you go to, in fact, we'll use my own example a couple of weeks ago. Oh, last week, I go to I went to dinner with one of my girlfriends, right? And what do? We order some loaded potatoes with cheese. So delicious, right? Hard to keep your figure when you eat like this. And also a pitcher of beer, right? So we're in the restaurant and we're talking business because she's a real estate investor. So Uncle Sam says, you know what, Jonathan, because you're there with your friend and you're going to do business potentially, you're going to write this off to the business. So we do, right? So I pay for it 100%, $100 down the drain, so to speak, right? But that $100 can turn into, but for me, anywhere between a 15,000 to $100,000+ deal, right? So I'm spending the money to potentially make more money, right? I'm investing. So Uncle Sam says, all right, well, you got to eat, didn't you? Like your belly got full. You got to have a good libation. So now your mouth is all nice and taken care of, no longer dry. And I want to say thank you for that. So you're going to deduct 50% of that experience. And the rest of it, we're going to call it a non-deductible expense. But don't worry, it's not going to really have an impact on you. It's just that means you're just not going to claim the 100% of that meal. And so I, as the business owner, right, I just received a benefit from my own company by going out to eat. And yet I used company funds to pay for it.
Yeah.
Right. So we call that a fringe benefit. So when
Wow.
you're a sole proprietor, those fringe benefits are going to be limited in scope. They will be limited, right? But when you go to an S corp or to a C corp, those fringe benefits skyrocket. So for example, right now, C corporation. So in a C corporation, my fringe benefit, and it's a double win, you see, not only am I going to deduct this fringe benefit, I'm going to tell you in a minute what it is. I get to deduct it 100% in my business, but I also personally benefit called a fringe benefit. So this fringe benefit, are you ready for it?
Yeah.
Paid time off, right?
Okay.
So in my C corp or my S corp, in either case, we pay a salary because you have to when you own. By the way, no one tells you this. When you become an S or a C corp, you are mandated now by law to pay yourself a wage, right? So with that being said, um, my company now goes, oh, you know what, Jonathan, take a week off after working your ass off for tax season. So I'm going to pay you that entire week's worth, and the company is going to deduct that from the profits to thereby reduce taxable income downward,
Wow.
right? So it all depends on the entity. And we get this thing called a fringe benefit. So if we understand how fringe benefits work, then again, we can continue to shift the way we see our businesses, just like our children that come back later and go, don't worry, mom, don't worry, dad. I made a little bit extra money. It's for you. Or maybe I don't give it to you directly. Maybe I provide a meal for you. I take you out to dinner because you're my mom.
Yeah. Wow. That
Isn't that
is,
something?
yeah. And most people are just like, how do I get the next sale?
So how do you get the next sale?
No.
Well, are you
Well,
asking me?
no. I'm saying that in the regard of most people are like, how do you get the next sale? They're not thinking about, hey, I'm already doing pretty well right now. I'm making, let's go $100,000. And instead of paying out $40,000, $30,000. I could pay out $5,000 if I had everything run correctly, did all the deductions, everything worked out. So you're actually claiming a lot more income than you don't have to produce more to keep more income, is basically what I'm getting at. Those are all
Yes.
scenarios, but it seems that there's some businesses that do very well, but they just misplace this accounting department, and it could cause some issues and overpayment, and could
Yes.
easily a lot more money. So which is basically that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. Your financial statements that everyone cringes, right? Like everyone's butts go like, you know what I mean? Like they all clench up tight when you hear that or hear taxes, right? So financial statements, and the reason why I think people get all wound up about it is because, are you ready? It's a direct reflection on you as the parent of your child, of your
Yeah.
business, right? It's a direct reflection of you because all of your personal beliefs, all of your personal trauma, all of your personal garbage will flow over to your business, just like our parents did to us. They took on their abuse and their all the crap they took on, and guess what? They put it on us, right? So we do that to our business too. We do the same thing. We transfer the shit from one pile to the next. And so now you've got your business. And so you go like, okay, yeah, I got to make more money. I got to make more money, or I could just not. And here's the thing, right? So your balance sheet and your profit and loss statement and your statement of equity, these are all various legal and tax and accounting terms. But these statements are a direct reflection on who you are as a parent. Because let's say, for example, like your parent raised you to be, a charitable person. And so you always went and did charity and you gave to people like me who were always in need, right? And
Yeah.
there were times when that happened to us. And so you grow up with that philosophy, like I'm about believing and giving. That's probably why you become a nonprofit owner, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe your parents, like in my case, said that, oh, honey, we're not very wealthy, but we're rich in love. And so then what happens is you adjust your pricing to reflect this idea that if you charge more, you won't be loved.
Yeah.
Isn't that a little effed up? So then what happens is that we have to start to remove our own belief systems away from our company because our company does not know. Our company is pure. It's like a child. It's brand new. It's a baby. It's an infant. It doesn't know what it should be eating. And by the way, your company eats a lot, and it eats this thing called money, right? It's this thing called expenses. That's that's what it that's what it eats. And in order to feed it, you, the owner, have to go out there and hustle for it. And we call that sales, right? Because you're bringing in the meat so your child can eat, right? And
Yeah.
what they poop out, if you're not very careful, is byproduct, and we call that tax, right?
Yeah.
So, so needless to say, where's it going all this? So your financial statements are important because it tells us where your business is. And that's important because it's going to dictate the types of decisions that you have to make as a parent for your child. So,
Yeah.
for example, if you're tracking your income coming in, right? Because you're hustling, let's be real, you're the one who's hustling. I'm
Yeah.
doing it right now. Hustle, 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 right? Go get it. Financialhappiness.com, smallbusinessfinancialhappiness.com. See, I'm hustling, right? Go
Mhm.
out there and get it, right? So then the company's going to eat. Now, I could give it a bad diet and feed a whole bunch of sweets and buy a whole bunch of personal related bullshit that doesn't produce money, right? Which means I don't have an expense because that's personal, right? Therefore, I'm going to pay a lot of tax. Or I'm going to be strategic like I am, right? So I look at my numbers, I look at my expenses, I look at how much cash is coming in, and I go, okay, Jonathan, if you want to expand, right? If I want my companies to grow, then I'm going to strategically invest the money that's coming in that door into services that will yield me greater money, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, we all should have a coach. That's a classic example, right? You should all have a coach, whether it's a mindset coach, a business coach, a tax coach like me, or a business coach like me, or a mindset coach like me. The point is, like, everyone should have a coach at one point or another, right? We all have mentors, or we should. And these mentors cost money, right? Because you're investing in your own education, so to speak, so that you can what? Make more money.
Yeah.
Or for example, you go to an accountant and you go, well, I don't want to track all this myself. So you invest your money in an accountant who will make sure that when you look at your reports, you can make informed decisions.
Yeah.
Classic example. I had a client, I call them the boys. I shouldn't, I call them the boys. They're younger than me. I'm, in my 40s, and they're now in their mid 20s. But they came to me when they were in their early 20s, and they have this restaurant here in town in Phoenix, Arizona, off of McDowell and 7th Avenue. Shout out to them. It's called Pop and Tea Bar. And they hired me from the get-go. And they actually called me their nanny, which is hilarious, right? So like I come in and make sure everything looks great.
Yeah.
Well, we started looking at the financials, right? Because we're looking at the numbers, looking at the money. And we run some analysis, and I go back and I go, hey guys, you guys are hemorrhaging right now, hemorrhaging cash. Like you're losing it, like to the tune of like $90,000 a month in unnecessary hemorrhaging.
Yeah.
What's going on? Well, it was a combination of pricing. And why? Because they compared themselves to others. All right. That's a common mistake we make, right? Is to compare ourselves to others. And then we charge a little less. Then it was a combination of their labor. Their labor was too high. It was too high. They were trying to do the right thing and offer the right value for their employees to work with them. But when your company is brand new, it's like depending on the child you're having, right? Like in their case, it was a restaurant. So they gave birth to a very high-end kid, so to speak, that requires a lot of attention. And I brought him in and I said, we're going to fix this. Right now, by the way, they are in positive cash flow. They're a multi-six-figure business right now, which is awesome, right?
Oh,
And
amazing.
what I said to them was, we're going to tie up this blood, right? We're going to cease this blood. And I said, look, you guys are the owners of this business, and you are going to have to do some of the sweat work to take care of this baby until it's old enough and has enough money coming in that door that it can hire out help and help you to free up your time to go do what you want to do. And now they're getting ready to open up a second location.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's really about like how we see our companies in a whole different light. And that's what I do through the Bengel method.
I love it. That's incredible. And it really is turns everything on its side, because first of all, saying to someone, hey, we're going to start an LLC, we're going to start a business, or we're going to do this, intimidating. Hey, we got to look at financials, intimidating. How many assets are liability? Intimidating. These are all difficult things. So for you to sit there and really simplify it to, hey, we already do this. Let's understand it how we understand human life.
Mhm.
And I think that's really powerful stuff.
It's crazy because I remember when back in the day when I first started, I'd say to clients, you need a team of three, right? Just now, mind you, this team of three is when you're about the 150 to $200,000 gross revenue mark. Okay, so let's get clear here right now. So when you're about that level, you need to employ three major partners, right, or people that are going to contribute to your
Yeah.
business. It's going to be your tax strategist like myself, right, who also provides tax and accounting. You're going to hire yourself a lawyer. So that's to help you with the LLCs or C Corps or whatever
Yeah.
else you need for the legal side of that. And then you need a financial advisor, right?
Yeah.
Because you're going to have all this extra cash. Now you got to turn around and invest it, right?
Yeah.
Or, as I like to say, you can work with me again, because what I do is I say, okay, you have all this extra cash, but we're still not having the lifestyle that we want. And so, how do we continue to reinvest it back into the business to give us the life that we want? And so, reinvesting it would be to come to utilize your services, for example, and say, well, how do we put more money back in our pocket? Oh, we go when we invest with an advanced merchant processor, so that way we keep more of our money. Well, that's the goal, because that money, as I just said earlier, we're going to use it to what? Turn around and reinvest it back in our business.
Yeah.
Did you know, it's a funny fact? Most people don't realize this, but when you make about $100,000 in gross revenue, what you actually keep, if you're doing everything the right way, which you actually keep in your pocket, that you actually bring home, that you spend on your personal life, it's not very much. It's only about $15,000 to $10,000, give or take.
Oh, wow.
And the rest of it is all eaten up in your business, right? Paying for different expenses of different
Yeah.
things. And so reality is if you want to take home to your home to provide for your family, right? And let's say you want to take home $100,000 to blow, right? However you want to blow it, you want to take it home. I mean, you got to be making like 600,000, 700,000 or more to start maintaining that type of lifestyle.
Yeah.
Which
Wow.
means that if you're a solopreneur listening to this show, you better start hustling and bustling and getting out there and figuring this out. And more importantly, avoiding legally to pay overpayment of taxes. And this happens a lot to my entrepreneurs. I had a couple that came in and because they decided to do it themselves and they understand what they were doing, um, they are on the hook for over $80,000 in taxes right now.
Oh my God.
And yeah, over $80,000, right? So we're going back and fixing everything that they did. But you know what? It's like a woman named Sandra Yancey. She's the founder of eWomen Network, and she said it best. And she said that business is expensive. So you're going to either pay for it through your own mistakes, or you're going to pay for it when you invest in coaches, right? Or people to help you. And in this particular client, the ones that owe 80 grand, they invested with us 25,000. But that's just to go back and fix it. That's not even proactive. That's not even dealing with their future and their current moment.
Yeah.
That's just to go backwards in time and free up this $80,000.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
You got to make the investment.
Got to make the investment. And here's what I learned too. When you're born, especially like someone like me, if you're born into the mindset of poverty or scarcity, scarcity says that there's nothing there. People take from me, people take advantage of me, people always
Yeah.
want something from me, right? And it's like they're taking, 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 taking. And when we are in that mindset, and I'm guilty as charged for having that mindset, right? Like what it does is it stops us from actually achieving what we're supposed to do. And so we tend to guard all of our savings and we guard all our money and we guard everything. But when we switch the switch and we go, well, actually, there's plenty out there. There's plenty of clients. There's plenty of money. There's plenty of opportunities. There's plenty, there's plenty, there's plenty, there's plenty. When we switch that consciously and go, everything is possible, everything is at my fingertips, then what surprisingly happens is that it opens us up to the world, this energetic level. It opens us up and we start to see the money flow through because money is energy. And like light, if you take an optical cord, uh, did I say that right? If you kink it, right, the light that's passing through the fiber won't pass, right? It gets stopped where you kink it. So if you open yourself up to the mindset of abundance, right? Of everything, of giving, of love, of kindness, everything. If you open up your mind to that, it's like opening up that optic wire and now the light flows through. And that's what money does.
I love that. I love that, Jonathan. That's awesome because it really starts with ourselves and changing what we view money as and what we want to make adjustments with ourselves. Because once we believe it and we're not in this scarcity mindset, but we're in this abundance mindset, we can really take on the world. So, Jonathan, I know the time's running thin. Is there anything you want to leave with the audience? Where can they find you? Any last words?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first things first, yeah, I dropped a couple of websites in the conversation, right? But if you're somebody who's like, I want to learn a little bit about Jonathan and figure out kind of what he's all about, then what you want to do is you want to go to smallbusinessfinancialhappiness.com. That's where you can pick up my 5-step method. I actually have to update my marketing words. I'll be honest and just tell the world that's who I am, right? Being your true, authentic self. And that
Yeah,
means that I'm still doing my own marketing. Let's be real. But why? Because I actually love it. That's the thing, right? Like I actually love doing it. So, anyways, so you'll find it there, smallbusinessfinancialhappiness.com. If you want to learn about this online course that I teach, it's a 5-week program. We're tweaking it right now. So what was there right now is kind of like what's going on, but we're about to tweak it. And that's at Small Business Financial Happiness Blueprint.com. And if you wanted to check out my book, The ABCs of Deductions, An Entrepreneur's Guide to Tax Write-Offs, #1 best-selling book in 5 money categories, both nationally and international, where I strip out all the legalese and I just talk about the human principle behind why you're allowed to have this deduction. Then you want to go to it's the ABCs of Deductions.com. And if you're curious about maybe learning more about how we can help you to save, like my clients, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes because you're at that level and you're ready to take on this big, huge leap and you're ready to say yes to the dress, then honey bunnies, you got to go to talktojb.com. And it's my process where I ask you a whole bunch of questions. You'll upload some documents, and then we have a conversation. I'm going to share with you what your situation is, what are some opportunities that are waiting for you and what your investment would be to work with us.
Incredible. And I'll put all those links in the bio. Jonathan,
Yay.
you're the man.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Oh, one last thing, Jordan. Let's not forget why we were in business or why we're in business. And if you were watching this, but since you're listening to this, I'm snapping my fingers in front of me and I'm saying this. Remember, we are here to make mucho, mucho, mucho dinero. And along with that, to create lots of happiness for yourself and for others.